this meeting, since our chamber key persons and who inaugurated this chamber in 1944 before the independence, Dr. Rakesh Shanmugam, who drafted the first 3 budget of our country. I welcome our Chief Commissioner, S. Ramesh. In spite of his busy schedule, when we invited for this budget analysis meeting, he confirmed his presence.
Of 94-95 budget. 93-94 was the first budget in which certain directions were given regarding the reforms that this country will undertake. 94-95 budget was a real big bang budget. I had taken over as a Deputy Secretary and Mr. Manmohan Singh had told me that there has to be a transformation in the system of tax administration in this country. At the time, one could never understand what the tax system was in this country. There were about 300 induced exemptions. There were all kinds of taxes, all kinds of remissions. Nobody understood what they were.
And the topic that is allotted to me is income tax, customs, and central excise. So it's a real challenge. In fact, once somebody invited Winston Churchill to come and talk for 2 hours, and he was thinking maybe Winston Churchill will refuse because 2 hours of his time is very, very difficult to get. But Churchill immediately accepted, no problem. On the next occasion, he came and asked Churchill to talk only for 15 minutes. 2 hours is not required, only for 15 minutes. Churchill said, no, I don't have time. So this man was surprised. When I asked for 2 hours, you immediately accepted. You said you have time. But when I asked you to talk for 15 minutes, you said you don't have time. So Churchill's reply was like this. When you want me to talk for 2 hours, I don't need any preparation. I can come and talk whatever I want. But if you want me to talk for 15 minutes and that too of substance, then that means I have to prepare myself for 3 hours. So that is the most difficult task. So that is the kind of task which has been given to all of us.
So many things have been done in the budget for making the campaign very quietly and silent. The inverted duty structure, which is very, very critical issue for industry where your output rate is higher and your lower input rate is lower, your SAD accumulation for certain sectors, all those things have been picked up. Tablet computer has been identified as a big sector for manufacturing. So all this will give a big flip to manufacturing. So there are some things in excise and customs front which have actually moved towards the Make in India campaign, but unfortunately, they did not take credit for it or talk about it. Ideally, if it had been any other finance minister, he would have put a subheading in the speech itself, Make in India, and put some 10 points. I think it's one of the simplest and very clever moves in one stroke to abolish what wealth tax which does not garner them significant revenue, and then try to get the much more revenue through surcharge. Brilliant idea. And FM has also said that whatever is the information that is required in the wealth tax will be captured in the IT return. Now that is going to be a challenge.
I'm surprised when Tamil Chamber of Commerce called me again this year to talk about a subject which applies to my specialization at least. Some of the general issues which I think many times discussed again and again in the newspapers in the last 3 or 72 hours has passed since the budget is presented.
And I was also quoting a story, and I was telling them, please wait for the government to change. And as far as I am concerned, the great thing the government has done now, because I have been traveling last 3-4 months to various countries, some of my business friends are very confident. The confidence level has gone up. This is the biggest, probably the positive limit which has come up now, which is going to be really good for this country.
Dignitaries on the dais, invitees and participants of today's meeting. I deem it a privilege and honor to be here in your midst to address this August gathering of the post-budget analysis conducted by the Tamil Chamber of Commerce. As the speakers before me have been telling, keeping in mind the impending introduction of the GST in the next financial year, there has been reduction as well as rationalization in some levies with the eye on the proposed GST. There has been simplification and streamlining of various provisions of law and procedures with the primary motive of improving the ease of doing business. Several positive measures have also been taken to rationalize the penal provisions in central excise and service tax, which have been discussed earlier. These primarily have been done to avoid ambiguity and to reduce the discretion of the adjudicating authority. Further, facility of payment of arrears has also been formally introduced in the system. One very important aspect which has missed the notice of some of my fellow speakers is the facility to withdraw cases of prosecution in courts where the cases have been dropped by the adjudicating authority on merits. Thus, the budget clearly affirms the government's resolve to foster a stable tax policy and also a non-adversarial administration. The Honorable Finance Minister highlighted the commitment of the government to introduce GST as a game-changing reform on 1st April 2016. He has commented the GST in a very categorical and clear manner with these words, quote, GST is expected to play a transformative role in the way our economy functions. It will add buoyancy to our economy by developing a common Indian market and reducing the cascading effect on the cost of goods and services. We are moving in various fronts to implement GST from the next year. There could, in my opinion, there could be no better, no clearer words from a person unless the Finance Minister of the government's firm resolve to introduce GST on 1st April 2016. Thinking of coming to talk of GST introduction, I would like to quote a few of my personal interaction. Way back in the year 2000, I was a student of MBA studying in Australia. It was in that year that Australia introduced GST, 1st July 2000. The expected day of GST introduction was announced and it came into force. There was hue and cry all over. Why? Because the price of bread went up by 2 cents from 99 cents to $1.01. It was hue and cry because bread is one of the most important staple food and everyone buys it every day. So the impact of GST as little as 2 cents on a very sensitive commodity was felt all over Australia. And the next day, immediately, the tax department, Australian tax office, immediately woke up, they changed the schedules and made sure that the price came down to 99 as envisaged earlier. Behind all this, you would understand that almost for a period of 1 year or more, the Australian taxation system had virtually formalized the entire rules and regulations of GST. They had massive outreach campaigns, education, awareness drives about GST, taking them to various chambers of commerce and to the medium and small scale entrepreneurs and to the common mom and pop stores everywhere. Everyone was aware of GST well in advance and a huge campaign was done and it was almost introduced virtually flawlessly except for the small glitch which itself became a big issue. So I'm just trying to tell that the government is going to introduce in 2016. I think it's time we also formalize the entire paraphernalia, the entire infrastructure, the entire rules and procedures of GST, trading industry, so that everyone is aware of all these things. I'm sure that in the months to come, such an awareness campaign will definitely be done, and I'm sure that the real game changer that GST is going to happen, that is going to come, will be felt across by everyone. Another incident which I recollect is when GST was introduced in Canada. The insurance industry initially lobbied to become exempt from GST. They felt that we don't have to pay GST. Insurance is something very different and people won't accept GST burden on insurance. After some time, the same insurance industry which lobbied to go out of GST, lobbied to come back into GST, and they lobbied very hard to come back to GST. That's because they realized that they could not take input tax credit and they were the losers. So GST is such a comprehensive game changer. There's going to be buoyancy in the revenues. There's going to be a dramatic reduction of the cascading effect of various taxes. So I think it's a small price to pay, as the other speakers have been saying, that the rates of taxes, especially service tax, is going up. It is still 12.36. It's not 14% yet, I can assure you. It's going to become the near future. And the 2% cess will come on top of it. But think of GST, when it comes, it's going to be a massive cascading effect, and it's going to be providing substantial advantages to each and every one who comes within the ambit of GST. I think this budget has heralded a new era in indirect taxation, and I am very sure that the earnest efforts taken by the government in the next few months would enable the seamless and smooth transition into the state-of-the-art GST. Since there's not much of time, I would like to give a very brief PowerPoint presentation of a very few slides about the major changes which are noticed in the customs and excise and service tax. Measures to improve the ease of doing business has already been told. There has been a massive simplification and rationalization in the way registration is being given. Central excise and service tax registration will now be given in 2 days for single premises. There is also, as has been told, a lot of emphasis on e-business and e-governance. We encourage the trade to go in for digital invoices, e-invoices, and also for preservation of records also in a digital format. The Advanced Ruling Authority is there to provide advanced rulings on certain various issues of law. Earlier, only private limited, public limited companies and non-residents were allowed. Now it has been extended to a resident company also. Resident company can be of different types, as has been told there. Customs duties and central excise duties, a lot of changes have taken place. I would not like to go deep into it. But basically, as has been said, the thrust is on the Make in India project, and a lot of excise duties have been reduced. A lot of representations were there from the trade that there's a inversion in the duty structure which has been rectified. Further, the custom duties on the raw materials, the inputs also have been reduced because it helps the Make in India. Exemptions also have been given under various items of service tax. So service tax, basically a lot of changes are going to take place from different dates, from 1/3 to 1/4, and different dates are there for different things. Road ahead is GST. India can do a wonderful job on 1/4/2016. Thank you.